Hi, fam! Welcome back to our second episode of 5 Catching Us Up at the Water Cooler, the summer series that's all about short-form content. Today, we are targeting an important topic regarding justice-based exposure and response prevention, or ERP. And since Pride Month is wrapping up, we're going to apply this lens to the queer community, who can and does suffer from harm when exposures are not thoughtfully crafted to target core fears in value-driven ways. But for starters, let me just remind you, fam, this isn't therapy, so take what you hear, reflect, and please chat with your trusted providers about how justice-based ERP could benefit you. So I'm going to explore 3 core fears, those deeper emotional threats that fuel OCD beneath the surface of obsessions. But just as an FYI, whether you're queer or an ally like me, or maybe you struggle with different intersections, these tips can still benefit you. And the why is because these themes or fears say nothing about who you are as a person, and they say everything about OCD. So let's start out with our first example. We're going to target the subtype or theme of sexual orientation OCD, otherwise known as SO-OCD. First things first, what is SO-OCD? Well, just like any other type of OCD, it's when a person experiences persistent, unwanted thoughts or doubts about one's sexual orientation, resulting in significant distress, compulsive behaviors, and/or avoidance. Examples might include thoughts like, what if I'm not actually gay? Or what if I'm actually straight? So you may be wondering, who can get SO-OCD? Well, anybody with OCD. You definitely do not have to be queer to experience this theme, because again, this theme, just like all of OCD, isn't actually about who you are. So what is it about? Well, that's where our core fear comes in. Now, in our treatment community, we talk about how OCD is idiosyncratic. Simply stated, it means we're all our own special unicorns. So as formulaic as OCD's playbook can be, it still shows up and presents uniquely across folks. Therefore, core fears can range across people. But in this case, a good starting place could include a fear about losing identity, or perhaps a fear about living a lie. Another option might be a fear of being dishonest with oneself or others. So for warriors, loved ones, and providers encountering SO-OCD, figuring out this core fear is a foundational piece to the recovery puzzle. It's distinct and separate from actual orientation or even identity itself. So now that we have our core fear, it's time to set up our justice-based approach. Justice-based ERP originally landed on my radar from a powerful call to action penned by Dr. Caitlin Pinciotti et al. To address recommendations for more equitable treatment and an elimination of harmful wording or exposures that contribute to microaggressions and minority stress. That means not using people as props, incorporating value-driven exposures, embracing uncertainty, and, ding ding ding, targeting those core fears. And if you want to learn more about the research and growing understanding for justice-based ERP, you can jump over to this episode's blog at ocdfamilypodcast.com to learn more about that call to action, online resources, and training opportunities. But for now, let's apply the justice-based lens to addressing the core fears of a loss of identity in our SO-OCD example. A justice-based exposure would invite an identity-affirming exposure, like spending time in queer spaces or saying, it's okay not to know with 100% certainty, and I still belong here. Now, if you're newer to ERP at large, or you've been around the block a time or two with your own exposure hierarchy, this might sound hard, and there's no two ways around it. It is hard. And while this chat isn't targeting the magic of specifically why ERP helps, I am going to add some links and resources on this episode's blog because it's important to understand the why behind this evidence-based practice. Okay, so for the interest of application, let's practice 2 more examples, shall we? Let's try a relationship OCD example this time, mix it up a bit. And though we're going to chat about a queer couple in this circumstance, again, the problem isn't about being queer or not, the problem is OCD. So any relationship, romantic, partner, religious, parent, all these different relationships can be impacted by relationship OCD. But for the case of this example, let's say the doubt is, what if I don't really love my partner? Okay, so the first step is we're going to identify that core fear. One example might center around, what if I'm incapable of love? But often, I'm going to say the core fear I find in relationship OCD has a nucleus of perfectionism. That idea of what if there's a better match out there? What if I could be happier, more attracted to my partner? Or the kingpin, relational FOMO. What am I missing out on if I stay in this relationship? The question is no joke when it comes to OCD, and it's different than regular relationship anxieties experienced in, say, dating. So if that's the core fear, we have our relational FOMO, how can we address it from a justice-based approach? First off, we want to make sure we're honoring the impact of cultural invalidation when applicable. This is separate from OCD, but often an important piece of psychoeducation when encountering a host of different minority stressors. So, an exposure in this case might involve, say, writing about their love story without editing any doubts, and pairing that with reading about queer joy. Because again, the goal is targeting uncertainty and embracing those doubts, and substantiating that right to love openly. Okay, fam, up for one more? Don't threaten me with a good time. Let's keep learning together. The third example is going to address another flavor of OCD, moral scrupulosity and queer identity. So for this case, we're going to consider a non-binary person with the following intrusive fear. What if I'm not really queer enough and somehow I'm adding harm to the broader community? Okay, so for starters, and hopefully we sound like a broken record by now, this isn't about the person's actual identity, and it's not about the intersection. It's about OCD. So what is the core fear then? Well, two ideas that immediately spring up in my mind anchor around imposter syndrome or a fear of causing harm. If we're afraid maybe we're a fraud that might be causing harm to anyone, let alone a group or a community of people we care about deeply, people we love, then that's what we want to target with our justice-based approach. So this might look like practicing a value-driven exposure, like not avoiding your friends or your loved one, while resisting the compulsion to self-monitor or over-apologize, and sit with our discomfort while engaging in value-driven activities. A real practical example of this might look like sharing an affirming post on social media without any caveats, explanations, disclaimers, or sharing your value-affirming pronouns, even when OCD is challenging it. So often, anxiety and distress are seen as the enemy. And it makes sense because OCD uses those to torture OCD warriors quite a bit. But using justice-based ERP teaches us that not only can we endure the distress, but that doesn't define us. And it allows for aligning treatment with dignity, identity, and safety. So that's it for today's chat. Thanks for hanging out and learning more about how to challenge OCD while respecting our loved ones. Mental health should always honor identity, not erase it or use it as a prop. If you're a provider trying to learn ways to improve your justice-based approach, I'll also note that OCD Training School has a really affordable, on-demand, CE-eligible course by Dr. Caitlin Pinciotti that can help. And if you're so inclined, you can even jump over to ocdfamilypodcast.com/courses and use my special link to support the family at no extra cost to you. But above all, I'll end with noting that OCD has already done enough to erode people's trust within themselves. But when we can amplify these conversations that center around evidence-based care and lived experience, there's more safety and there's more hope. And pride is ultimately a reminder that you belong, fam. Each and every single person. OCD doesn't get to take that from you. So thank you for being a part of this fam. We're better together.